Welcome, Carm Capriato, the Service Aftermarkets podcast pioneer with the gold standard of aftermarket business podcasts. Join me for Aftermarket Insights as we advance the aftermarket. And as always, know that you'll learn just one thing. Find us on your favorite podcast listening app and remarkableresults.biz or on my YouTube channel. Hey everybody, Carm Capriato. Welcome, Remarkable Results Radio. Glad to have you here. One quick reminder again about the Brakes for Breasts program. It's always October of every year. BrakesForBreasts.com is the place to go to find out everything about this program. I really encourage you to be part of it. Your clients get free brakes. During October, you send a percentage of the entire brake job up to Brakes for Breasts. They've been doing it for 10 years, $1.8 million, and the money goes toward the clinical research for triple-negative breast cancer at the Cleveland Clinic, and they're in trials. Love the people down there, love the entire team that put this thing together, and they're shop owners just like you. Hey, I am always excited to have Derek Kaufman on the podcast, and every time I get so enamored with the news, and I say, Derek, set me straight on EVs, because he's come on and done a lot of things on vehicle technology in electric vehicles. Derek Kaufman is managing partner at Schwartz Advisors, doing mergers and acquisitions, an entrepreneur. He founded C3 Network LLC in 1997 to help clients launch new products in the transportation business. Impressive resume in the transportation business, and sits on a lot of different boards. He's the go-to guy for the podcast. And so I said, can you give me an EV update? And he wrote back and he goes, yeah, you're ready for it? And I said, our listeners are always ready. So I appreciate the opportunity always to catch up. And we've been talking about this transition to electric drive, and I'm wondering what new updates you may have.
Yeah. Carm, it's always great to be with you. And yeah, I've got lots to share.
Sit down, everybody.
I'll start with a simple statement. And I think it's a bit of a rough one maybe, but I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see a complete makeover of the world's car markets by the Chinese. Europe and the USA will move to block them politically, 100% tariffs or whatever it is. But I don't think it'll matter. I think legacy auto brands are going to need to totally restructure to stay alive. Oh, there's your start for you.
Uh-oh. Interesting opening. So tell me more.
Well, this is about strategically building a foundation. And the Chinese, you can say what you will about the Chinese government, and you can say a lot, right? But they play long ball. And in 2009, they had the foresight to put in $100 billion to build up two industries. First was to corner the world's market on EV battery minerals. So they started buying up cobalt and nickel and manganese and, a lot of the rare earths. Second was to ramp up the production of electric drive cars. And they succeeded kind of wildly. So today, a very high percentage, like 90% of the cathode materials and literally 97% of the anode content out there is controlled by the Chinese. CATL is the largest battery producer in the world, Chinese company, and a very large percentage of US and European companies are dependent on them. Tesla and Ford and GM, Daimler, BMW, Asian, Hyundai, Honda, Toyota, they're all working with CATL. So the second move was to radically change the production of cars in China. I've been going back and forth to China for a long time. And I remember the days when they reached out to the world and they partnered with everybody. So BMW went in and Audi went in, GM, whatever, and no more. They don't want to partner with anybody. They've got it. And now what the government is doing is subsidizing the startup of companies. A couple of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago in my conference speeches, I was counting up the number of EV companies in China. I think it was 486 companies as I remember it. And what the government did is they didn't choose winners in those. They just let them beat each other up. Today, that 486 is down to something under 100. And I'd say maybe 20 of them are really viable. But the remaining ones that are, in that 20 are now building battery electric vehicles that are, in my opinion, the best of the world. I think a lot of people in our market still continue to think that low-cost Chinese BEVs are just crappy cars that won't compete. But I'm here to tell you that is not true. And in fact, in a way, they've now over-succeeded because they've built up so much production capacity in China that the domestic markets, and they're struggling a little bit economically in China right now, so their domestic demand can't handle it, so they need new world markets for export. Every automaker in the world is now scared, and for good reason, that these Chinese brands are going to take markets away in a lot of the countries of the world.
Wow, man, I hear you, but I also see major work being done to block the sale of China exports. Don't you think that it'll protect us?
Yeah, that is absolutely true. I'm not so sure, Carm, that the threat is necessarily the sale of Chinese cars into our markets. I think it's more about the takeaway of other world markets from USA brands that are producing in those countries, not necessarily exporting to them, but that will weaken the USA brands financially and threaten their future. So in 2023, China surpassed Japan for the first time ever as the number one auto export country in the world, about 5 million vehicles exported. And in 2024, those exports are up about 27%. Now, that's both ICE and BEV cars, and they're selling into places like Russia and Brazil and Mexico, actually Belgium, UAE, obviously a lot of the Asian countries. But it's more than the exports. The Chinese know, just as you said, that countries are going to move to block them. So they're building up, just like we did in years past, they're building up in-country production of the capacity with plants in Brazil and Africa, Morocco and Turkey, I think Hungary and Austria, and big time in Mexico. And those factories aren't just building for local countries, they're regional plays to kind of export regionally from those plants. And I think they also see the production in Mexico as an eventual entry point into the USA market.
Wow. All right. So give me some scale. What kind of vehicle sales levels are we talking about here?
So, okay, S&P Global has a forecast about 88 million cars are going to be sold worldwide. And that's been up.
That's a staggering number.
Yeah, it's been much higher. It's been, up closer to 95 million. But that's the world market. So if the Chinese sell 30 million, which they do, that's 34% of the market. USA and Europe are roughly equal, about 15 million in Europe and about 16 million this year in USA. So each of those regions is roughly half of China's sales. And that leaves about 27 million for all other country producers. And the challenge is this. I think that China's superiority in electric vehicle design and the world's move then to transition transportation to electric will result in that 34% that China holds today moving to maybe 40 or even 50% in the next 10 years.
Do you think they're that much better at vehicle design than, say, what we can do?
I hesitate to say it. I don't want to say it, but I will. I do now. I mean, I've always touted, I'm a Tesla fan, right? Their work in BEV design, from that clean screen has been absolutely tremendous. They build their own drive motors. Their drive motors cost them $2,000, where Ford and GM are buying them from outside third parties, and they're paying $3,500 for them. They're much more vertically integrated. You know about the Giga casting, where they've got like 3 main sections now of the undercar of the Tesla, and they've eliminated 300 parts or something from the car. It's absolutely tremendous. The software leaps and bounds ahead of some other producers. They just perfected in the 4680 battery. They just announced, I think this week or last week, that they're going to coat the cathodes in those batteries now in a dry process instead of a slurry, which produces major performance gains for the batteries. So the result is that, the Model Y has been a top-selling vehicle model. It was the number one vehicle model selling in the world in 2023. They sold over 1 million of them. But I think things are changing now. I just noticed in some research that they were going to go to a single piece gigacasting, I believe, down from the 3, and they just put that on the shelf. And I think that's because of cost savings. They're falling now in sales a little bit. They see more competition coming, so they've got to watch themselves. And that competition is coming from China. Let me give you a couple of examples for comparison. So I mentioned the Model Y, and to keep that thing selling strongly, they just reduced the price some months ago on that. So if you go on their website, the starting price of it is $31,490, and you get all giggly thinking, oh man, under $35,000 BEV. But by the time you add a paint color and you want full self-driving, the paint color is $1,000 to $2,000, full self-driving is $8,000. So by the time I got done pricing the car, it was not $31,000, but $55,000.
Wait, what color did you pick?
There's only one color you can get without paying for it, and that is slate gray. And I chose the blue because I like blue. I think the blue was $1,000, and some other colors are $2,000.
So that's kind of like asking for onions on your cheeseburger.
It's exactly right, and you got to watch how much the onions cost.
Hey, AAPEX 2024 registration is now open at AAPEX.Show.com. Now, AAPEX has an incredible value for the service professional, shop owner, technician, and service advisor. Joe's Garage is your place to hang out with 10 working bays and real live working conditions. You'll find special seminars on Audi, VW, BMW, Mercedes, Tesla, under-the-hood diagnostics, advanced drivability, ADAS calibration, transmission training from ATRA, and more. Business and sales training on mastering organizational skills, time management, leading your team, and driving profits, among others. This year, the training courses are some of the best offered ever with the industry's best and brightest trainers and coaches. This year's AAPEX 2024 will have more product demos, trending training, marketing and social media support to help you grow your career, sales, and profits. Remember, if you earn your living in the aftermarket, then AAPEX is the expo for you. Continue listening as we bring you the latest from AAPEX 2024 and save the date, November 5th through the 7th. Don't hesitate. Go to AAPEXshow.com. Hey, let's face it. Your shop management system is the single most important tool in your shop, period. NAPA Trax has made selecting the right shop management system easy by offering the industry's best, most comprehensive SMS. Now, it all starts when a local representative meets with you to learn about your business and how you need to run it. After all, it's your shop, so it's your choice, and having local representation is a huge plus. Customizing Trax to your business, whether you're a one-person shop or a large multi-bay or multi-location company, a representative consults with you to help optimize your shop's workflow, efficiency, and profitability. Trax always has the flexibility to do business how you need to do it, which means it can also grow as your business grows. And unlike the other guys, we'll be there for you after installation with the best training and support in the business. Yes, a learning management system tailored to each role in your company. Simply put, Trax was designed and built for shop owners just like you. Visit us on the web at NAPA Trax, that's NAPATRACS.com. Hey, ever wonder how your labor rate compares to your market and state? You now have a site where you can confidentially upload your rate and see other labor rates published in your market. LaborRateTracker.com is an important site to know about. Currently, the database has over 1,000 shops participating and growing every day. But there's more to setting your rates than finding out what others charge. You should look at the labor rates in your state and town to gain a complete picture of the labor rate landscape. Hey, it's easy. Get market intelligence like never before at LaborRateTracker.com.
The Chinese have a company called XPeng. And if you've been reading about this XPeng G6, I watched something called the Electric Viking. It's a guy out of Australia who just follows this stuff so closely. It's just crazy. And he just did a complete review, and he's a real Tesla fan, but he just did the XPeng G6 versus the Model Y. He gave the award to the G6. So that starts at $27,630, but there's almost no options on the car. Everything is built in. I got up to $35,000 as the buy price for the car versus $55,000 for the Model Y. It matches the Model Y's range. It has an 800-volt battery versus the Model Y's 400. it charges 10 to 80% in the same amount of time. I think Model Y says 15 to 20 minutes. XPeng says 18 minutes. It has 7 years of warranty coverage on the total car and 8 years on the battery. Model Y is 8 years on the battery, but 4 years on the car. The XPeng has a 360-degree video camera arrangement on it that will seek open parking spots as you pull into a parking lot or a parking deck. And then, as you get there, it guides the car into that slot. It's crazy kind of tech like that they have. Advanced autopilot standard on it. So it kind of goes on and on and on. And my point here is that Tesla's been the benchmark for a long time, and rightly so, but they're now under pressure. And I think we're witnessing a sea change in vehicle design superiority. And I do hate to say that it's being led by Chinese companies.
Okay, I'm really interested in this Model G6. Can I buy one actually or not from anywhere here in the U.S.?
Nope, you can't buy it here.
Okay.
You got to move to Australia.
I see.
Or be in China. I think XPeng is moving into Europe. So XPeng is one of the 20 companies over there that is pretty darn strong. Take a look at what
one of the finalists, if you will.
Yeah, one of the finalists
in this level of competition out from 400 shops that were competing out there.
Yeah,
and so I'm getting a little depressed. You seem to be saying that the kind of game is over for our domestic OEMs or even the Euro markets. I just can't even imagine that this could happen.
Yeah. Well, it just goes against everything in my nature. So I say, okay, the game's never over.
Right.
But I think that Western companies need to move really fast now to position for the future. I mean, I see the moves 100% tariffs or 25% tariffs on minerals for battery materials. And I fully understand that the Chinese don't play by the rules. They shouldn't be allowed to skew markets through the theft of intellectual property and predatory pricing. I get all of that is underhanded, and I hate it. But I also think two things. We have seen this movie before, slightly differently maybe, but in the 1970s, and I'm not suggesting that Japan and China play the same in the market from the intellectual property standpoint at all, so don't get me wrong here. But in the 1970s, Japan bankrolled their automakers to export cars at very low prices. So they set up, kind of predatory pricing. And those cars, basically because of Dr. Deming, were vastly better quality than GM, Ford, and Chrysler were making. I remember going out in 1979, and I looked at a Chevy Citation and a Honda Accord. And I'm a guy that went to General Motors Institute. I'm a GM guy. Mm-hmm. And there was just no comparison. It just wasn't the same game. So Honda and Toyota started making inroads in the USA market. So what President Reagan did at that time was he negotiated with Japan to impose voluntary export restraints. He didn't, slap them with 1,000 or 100% tariffs, but he did export constraints to give our makers some time to become more competitive. Mm-hmm. But the other thing he did, Carm, was he worked with the Japanese and said, look, you've got to come to the United States. So he opened up the United States market and said, come and produce cars here and generate jobs for Americans. And of course, those plants are still here and they're a mainstay now in our automotive market. So the Biden administration has moved to subsidize the building of battery plants. So that's somewhat similar, but they've added, 25% tariff on the minerals and now a 100% block on Chinese cars instead of bringing them in. So I really would do something different here. And you might have people jump on me for this, but I'll say it anyway. I would actually embrace the Chinese supply chain. I'd embrace the supply chain of minerals for battery production, and I'd open up our markets to the Chinese vehicles as long as they were produced in the United States. And then for good measure, I'd urge Ford and GM and Stellantis to add a new product to their product lines. And that is probably a whole other conversation for us, but it's EREVs. So the Chinese have worked, with hybrids and plug-in hybrids and then battery electric, and they got us all giddy on all these types of models. Now they're coming. There's 18 different models in China of EREVs, extended range EVs. And what they are is a gas engine running a generator that builds up the battery that drives the motor that drives the car. So yes, it is not zero emission. It is near zero emission. But they've got 600, 800, even 1,000-mile range on these and ultra clean near zero emissions. And they're the right drivetrain for the United States. The irony of that EREV thing when I see this now is that GM had one, and they had one back in 2011. The Chevy Volt was a brilliant car, and it was an extended range EV. It had a gas engine and a full plug-in hybrid powertrain, but they killed it. Now they're up against 18 new models coming out of China, but more than that, Hyundai, Kia, Mazda are all going EREVs. So, watch out.
Wow. I got a million follow-up questions, but you really think we should embrace the Chinese?
Yeah, it's tough to say, but I absolutely do. I think it's very easy to say that we should never get into production arrangements with communist-owned automakers. But if you walk through any parts retail store, tell me where all the products on the shelves come from. So the fact is that the aftermarket is already in production arrangements with communist manufacturers, or at least communist imposed manufacturers, and has been for a long time. So I'll put a positive spin on that. I think things will get worked out with the Chinese. And I think they can start putting assembly plants in the United States, and American consumers can get great BEV cars at much lower prices. The U.S. dealers will scream bloody murder at first, but I say, hey, don't sell them online, sell them through dealerships. And you know what? They'll do it. They'll sign the Chinese brands to sell them to dealerships. And guess what? The U.S. aftermarket will service those Chinese cars right along with every other brand that we move into with that 50-50 ICE and BEV VIO in the future.
The aftermarket always adapts.
It does indeed, Carmen. That's why I like being in it.
Wow. You got to come back so we can talk a little deeper about what Toyota just said about creating all hybrids in their entire line, and the fact that we can't lose Tesla in my mind. I think they have been such a mainstay as far as getting us to think battery electric vehicles.
For sure.
And they led the way for so long that we can't let them, in my opinion, again, competitive democracy and all that, meritocracy, all that stuff goes, Derek. But it was Tesla who told us EVs were good.
I watched a video today, Carm, on a 4,000 mile an hour UFO that Elon Musk is developing at SpaceX. You say, no, that must be wrong. No, that's right. 4,000. In fact, the thing has a stealth mode that it absolutely appears as a cloud, and it has had the U.S. military scramble fighter jets to go up against it.
No.
Now, I've got to do more. Yeah, I've got to do more research on this to understand, is this real or am I being pumped here? But with Musk, I would not put it past him that he's developing that.
I would love to just be his shadow, and I'd love to be able to see Elon Musk's toy box.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, he's the Einstein of our age, but the difference between Musk and Einstein is that he actually makes stuff. Einstein was theoretical, right? And Musk makes stuff.
He makes stuff. Well, this was eye-opening. I'm not sure that I have a strong opinion either way, but I think we have to, as an aftermarket, what we repair, what our customers are going to buy that we know we need to repair, we need to be totally open, totally embrace everything that's EV. The training that we need to have for today's vehicles needs to be a high priority for every shop owner to get out there and be sure that you are as capable as ever, so that as this entire industry changes and the technology on the vehicle changes, no one is going to be afraid to open their arms, embrace this, learn about it, and keep our customers' transportation alive and going and running as best as it can. Wow. Thank you for this actual earth-moving episode. I appreciate it, because you always have this incredible vision in view. I know you're well sought after in the industry to say, what's Derek say? Maybe that would be a great podcast the next time you come on. What's Derek say?
Oh man, I'm not sure I want that billing, Carm.
Managing partner, Schwartz Advisors LLC, who's doing mergers, acquisitions, and always looking to the future. Derek Kaufman, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks, Carm. Great to be with you.